How you doing, YouTube? Back again. So before we get into today's video, I wanna preface this video, and for that matter, the channel, by saying a few things. So as I continue to put out content, and you guys continue to tune in to watch my videos, you're gonna hear me talk a lot about money, finances, retirement, promoting, investments, salaries, benefits, all things that typically aren't discussed when talking about policing. And so I just want to go on the record now, early on, and say that by no means does me talking about those things take away from the morality of why you should join, the right reasons for joining, any of those things. In fact, it's like if you're a jerk, or like a racist, or just an overall crappy person, we really don't need any more you guys applying. So I just want to put that out there. But also that isn't the focus of this channel. I'm not here to talk about why you should want to be a police officer and really even what the day-to-day is. I'm here to talk about the things that I mentioned earlier to help people that are already police officers and to help people that are thinking about coming into the field organize their career in such a way that will allow them to retire on their own terms, retire comfortably, and hopefully with more money than they thought they could make in the profession. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's get into the topic of today's video, and in my opinion, one of the most overlooked aspects of a person's career, and that's picking the right police department. Picking the right kind of police department has a huge effect on your career. I mean, it will literally determine the type of policing that you'll be doing, as well as things like how much you'll be paid, benefits, your work hours, what time you have off, work-life balance, call volume, retirement age, and the income you're going to be making in your retirement. All of these things are extremely important. And so understanding that the very first step to getting into law enforcement is making sure that you pick the right police department that works for you, your family, and overall your life goals. Think about it like this. Picking the right police department is like picking the right college. Like some colleges, as we all know, are rated better than others. It's just a fact. It might be because they have better teachers, better curriculum, they're just more historic, they have better internship opportunities, they're respected within the fields that they're known for. Regardless, all of these things play together and they become more coveted than other colleges. Same goes for police departments. Not all police departments are made the same. There are some police departments that are better than others. And it's not always just about the pay. So it's not about what the police department is just going to pay you more. That's not all you want to look at. You want to look at things like the political climate, the safety of your pension, soft pay. See, when you start to tie all these other factors in, it can really start to place a highlight and a spotlight on police departments that you might have originally wanted to overlook or might not have made your list simply because you were looking at a low starting salary. Just some things to keep in mind. So the first question you need to ask yourself when you're picking a police department is, what kind of police agency do you want to work for? Do you want to work for a municipality? Do you want to work for a county sheriff's office? Do you want to work for the states? Or do you want to go federal? Each tier of policing is completely completely different than the previous. Like your day-to-day will look nothing like what it would if you were working a municipal police department and a state police department. Even though they're both police officers, they have completely different areas of responsibility and completely different jurisdictions. Want to hump a lot of calls, take a lot of different incidents, go from crashes to homicides, from homicides to family violence, from family violence to burglar alarms, then maybe being a municipality police officer would be for you, a city cop. Want something that's a little bit more calm, less call driven, with more opportunities to do proactive policing. So things like running traffic, setting up various operations, staying with things a little bit more long term, just having a little bit more freedom over a wider jurisdiction than maybe county. Being a sheriff would be something you're more interested in. Or, maybe you're like an isolationist and you don't like ever seeing your coworkers, and the thought of pulling over a 9-passenger van with blacked out windows on a lonely, desolate country road like appeals to you. Maybe that like really gets your thrill going. If that's the case, then being a state patrol officer was right up your alley. Or maybe you want to specialize and you really want to focus on just drugs or firearms or immigration or really high profile investigations and serial. Well, then maybe going federal is what you're looking for. And it's not that each tier doesn't temporarily interact with the other, but that primary day-to-day responsibility is very different. Like they're not similar. And that's why they are organized the way they are. It's important to choose not only what interests you, but also what you're best qualified for to maximize your chances of getting hired in the first place. This is important so that you're not wasting all of your savings or income on out-of-state testing and traveling and hotels and eating out, which can really start to eat away at your personal finance. So the next key point that you want to look at when you're picking a department, or maybe the next concept you want to kind of understand in your head, is that not all agencies get paid the same. Now, I know what you're saying. Obviously not all departments get paid the same. It's going to determine the size of the city and the tax base and all of that. And that's absolutely true. But I'm talking about on just a fundamental level. There is a difference in pay, and there will always be a difference in pay between what a city cop makes versus what a county cop makes versus what a state cop makes versus what a federal cop makes. So let's take a look at that. We're going to look at this more in depth and show generally how and why the different tiers of agencies get paid what they get paid in relation to each other. In most cases, again, this is not in every case, but in most cases, if you were to look at departments, police departments, agencies, whatever you want to call it, in most cases, I would say 80 to 90% of the case, the city agencies are going to pay more than the county, state, and federal departments. But why is that? Well, like I said earlier, when you come to a city, especially a big city, I'm not talking about a small little town here. I'm talking about a large metropolitan area. When you go there as an officer, you're going to work. You're going to hump calls. You're going to be running back and forth. Okay, your life is going to be on the line. You're going to have the responsibility of keeping that city, that organization, that multi-billion-dollar organization safe and an attractive investment for different businesses. That's both corporate and small businesses. These cities need their area to remain safe and viable so they can continue to bring in new residents, which brings in new tax monies, which allows them to continue to grow. Working in a city, you can go from working a crash to working a homicide to working a sexual assault case to working a family violence case. And sometimes you might have to go do those things more than once in a single day. And so that, along with what I said earlier, contribute to the typically higher salaries that city departments pay. So next on this list, I would say county officers are probably the next best paid. Why is it that they don't make as much as city officers, even though they cover a larger jurisdiction? And while this is true, what happens is oftentimes these county departments have contracts or memorandums of understanding with the cities that fall under the county's jurisdiction. So what these do is they basically detail that the city and the city's police department will handle all the calls that happen within that city's jurisdiction, even though it falls within county. So if you take like a normal sized county, maybe there's three to six different cities within that county. And those 3 to 6 cities each all have their own police department. So really, what is there left for county to do? Well, you look at, the jurisdictional border breakdowns of county, there'll be like some unincorporated areas that aren't really owned by a city. And that's really what the county looks at. They'll handle the calls for those areas, or they also handle the calls for like small little towns that don't have the infrastructure or the tax base to support their own police department. So if you want to look at it, they're going to have less responsibility, oftentimes less of a tax base, less call volume, and so typically they get paid less than their city counterparts. Of course, like I was saying before, this is a generalization. There are some county police departments that operate as a police department for the whole area, and that's different. But generally, this is the kind of city-county relationship that goes on. So if we're going to zoom out even further now, so we're going more macro, you have state officers. And they have the largest jurisdiction out of county and city. All counties fall within state jurisdiction. But again, generally, state highway patrolmen, state troopers are typically confined to working highways, expressways, things of that nature. In some states, in the smaller towns, they are the official police for that area. But typically, they are very one-dimensional work, like interdiction, those type of things. And they fall under state budgets. So if we're looking at it from a state's perspective, seldom will a state place a real high priority on its law enforcement. Why? Well, it's a state that is comprised of many cities and many counties, the majority of which all have their own functioning police departments and sheriff's departments. So there really isn't a pressing need. To overly fund, their state police force. It's just something to keep in mind. So let's look at a real life example of the differences in pay between, let's say, a city, county police department and a state department. So case in point, let's look at Florida and the Florida Highway Patrol, FHP. So their starting salary, according to their recruitment website, for a newly minted officer that just hit the streets is $46,917. Now that's only if they get sent to one of 3 counties: Palm Beach, Broward, or Dade. And that's because they're the most expensive counties to live in the state. So again, Florida Highway Patrol, just graduated, you're gonna make $46,917. Now, let's compare that to a more local agency, Miami-Dade County Police Department. Their starting salary for a newly minted police officer is $53,554. However, the max pay is $95,321 with step increases. See, the Florida Highway Patrol has no step increase. So when you graduate, that is what you're going to get paid, unless for some reason the state legislative session decides to pass a bill that allocates more money to the department. And I can say from personal experience that they went well over a decade before they got the raise to get to that $46,000. So basically the way it works with Florida Highway Patrol is, if you don't promote, there's a really strong chance that for a long period of time you're not going to get more money. Whereas with Miami-Dade County Police Department, they have it built into their contract that yes, you start off making $53,000, but each year or each step after a series of years, whatever's in the contract, you're going to continue to get increases whether you promote or not until you reach the max pay of that $95,000. So that's something to keep in mind. It's something you want to really look at when you're comparing departments. Now, federal agencies are a lot more complex and in-depth with their whole salary and pay structure. But if we're going to generalize, typically, especially for a lot of the three-letter bureaus, the starting pay is often higher than city, county, and state agencies. However, if you look at pay over the length of a career, so 20 to 30 years, oftentimes city departments, city agencies actually end up paying more over the long term than many of the federal agencies. Also, city, county, and state oftentimes, in like the majority of the cases, have way better retirements and way better pension packages than their federal counterparts. Case in point, let's look at a real life example. I always want to keep things like actually tangible for you guys. So let's take a look at the federal retirement for, let's say, the FBI, which is a federal agency, and compare it to the retirement for a local city agency, let's say Austin Police Department. So FBI agents fall under a retirement pension system called FERS, or FERS. It's Federal Employee Retirement System. It's essentially the federal government's version of a pension that you would find in the city. So let's read some numbers on it, straight from the website. It says the retirement rates are calculated at the following rate: 1.7% of your high 3 average salary multiplied by your years of service, which do not exceed 20 years, plus 1% of your high 3 average salary multiplied by your service exceeding 20 years. So FERS annuities are based on a high 3 average pay. Let's break it down and let me get some actual numbers for you. Okay, so let's run some numbers. All right, I'm gonna put the formulas up either here or somewhere on the screen so you can see them and it'd be easier to follow along. But let's take a look at what a federal agent for the FBI will be making after 30 years of service and a high 3 average salary of $100,000. So with their formula, we're going to be taking that $100,000, timesing it by 1.7% and timesing that by 20 years, or 20 for their years of service. Then we're going to add that answer to another formula, which is going to be $100,000 times 1% times 10 for those last 10 years of service that are above 20. So when you completely do that formula, you get 34,000 for the first part, 10,000 for the second part. Add that together, that is 44,000. So that agent's pension is going to be $44,000 for 30 years of work in the federal retirement system. Again, everyone has their own opinion, but to me, that doesn't seem like the best return on investment for a 30-year career. But everyone can make their own decisions. Now, let's look at what a local police department, Austin Police Department, is offering for their pension package and compare. So it says, Austin police officers qualify for a pension with the Austin Police Retirement System after successfully completing a minimum of 23 years of service, regardless of age. Your pension is based on the number of years of service at a multiplier of 3.2% per year. There is currently no maximum cap on the percentage you can earn. So the Austin Police Department's formula is a lot more simpler. It is simply the years of service. So in this case, we're going to be using 30 times a 3.2% multiplier equals a percentage of the base salary that you were getting. So again, the base salary, let's just say that this officer who works for the police department is also making $100,000. So they did 30 years. So with the calculation of 30 years of service with the 3.2 times multiplier, so 30 times 3.2, that gives us a total of 96%. So you're going to be eligible after 30 years to get 96% of your base pay. And in this case, the base pay that we're using is $100,000, which means that an officer working for the City Department of Austin who is making $100,000 and did 30 years of service is going to get a retirement of $96,000 a year versus his federal counterpart who did the exact same 30 years, who's making the exact same $100,000, is going to be receiving a pension of $44,000 a year. Now, the quality of life difference between those two income levels is obviously substantial. And it's something that you want to pay attention to. This is why you always want to look and calculate based on how long you want to stay in, how long you need to stay in, to understand what your retirement, what your end game is going to look like. I remember personally when I was going through my own application processes, and I was looking all across the nation at police departments to apply to, and I just happened to come across agencies, a few agencies in California. I was like instantly locked on. So if you haven't looked up any police departments in California, there are quite a few, and I mean quite a few, that have starting salaries well over six figures. Like how high? I'm talking about starting salaries of like 120, 125 were pretty common in some of the areas that I was looking at. So me being a few years younger, about 8 years younger, I saw those huge salaries and I was instantly sucked in. I started saying, like, telling my wife, like, hey, we're gonna move to California. Like, look at these pays, look at these salaries. Thank God, though, I took a little bit more time, did a little bit more reading, did a little bit more research, and pulled up some other amplifying information, and it gave me a bigger picture. So what did I find? Well, what I found is that when you take that $120,000 salary and then incorporate California's tiered income tax system and couple that with the ridiculous pension contribution percentages that a lot of those same high-paying departments are requiring, you really don't end up with that much money. And like, I'm talking about these pension contribution retirement percentages were well over 20%. In some instances, I saw 25, 30%. So that means that they're going to take 25 to 30% out of your paycheck every time you get paid to pay towards your pension. So after I ran all the numbers, honestly, I was looking at that $120,000 dropped all the way down to 83,000, 79,000. And then when you factored in the cost of living for the area that those departments were at, I wouldn't be able to provide for my family. We wouldn't be able to live, go on vacation, eat out, and do the things that we like to do and live the lifestyle that we want to lead. So I ended up not going with California. Now everyone's situation is different, but the point remains that you really want to pay attention to not only how much a department's putting up there on a recruiting page that they're paying. Seldom will a police department put front and center how much they're going to take out of your paycheck. But that is something that you need to take the responsibility on for yourself and find out. All right, lastly, before I get out of here, before you guys click off this video, I want to stress one more key thing. Don't just look at salaries and don't just look at pay. If there's anything that you do, anything that you want to take away from this video, is to pay attention to two things when you're looking at how much a police department or an agency, state, county, federal, otherwise, is paying. And that's state income tax and pension contributions. Very important. All right, we're at the end. So I know this was a ton of information, but I think that, and I hope that, you got maybe one or two new interest points, or maybe one or two new things that you can add to the level of the search and add to your list requirements when you're trying to pick the best department and the best move for you and your family. I'm signing off, and as always, if you like my videos, you want to see more, please subscribe, like the video, hit the notification bell, leave comments below. Let me know what you guys are interested in seeing. I have a lot more content coming out. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'll see you on the next one.